listener production.
Antoinette Lattouf here with the Weekend Briefing. So there are so many ways I could describe today's guest. And I'm going to start off by saying Azure Antoinette has an excellent name, and that's purely objectively speaking. Also that Azure is freaking hilarious. She finds a way to get serious belly laughs no matter how silly or sinister the issue is. She's pretty new to Australian audiences. Azure is African-American and moved to Australia a couple of years ago from the LA. Why did she move? Well, there are a couple of reasons which usually don't go hand in hand, like she moved for her Aussie love, but also because the Ku Klux Klan drove her out of her house. Azure is a Grammy-considered poet, a corporate crisis fixer, a speaker, a global ambassador for people living with multiple sclerosis, and best of all, she is also the co-host of a new podcast called The Antoinettes, which has just launched. You'll find out more about that excellent podcast soon, and also which other excellent Antoinette she is hosting with. Later in the show, we'll be giving you the weekend list. That's where my producer Helen and I recommend what to see, watch, do, eat, listen to, everything in between, and we'll also reflect on some of our briefing listener recommendations. We love hearing from you. We love trying out your recommendations, so please do keep those coming. But first, here is my chat with Azure Antoinette. Azure, how would you describe Azure Antoinette in one sentence? And I know this is a challenge for you as a poet because you like to use like lots of words, sometimes paragraphs and pages to describe like cloud or a speck of dust.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And just in the first, the first seconds of us talking, you have already been just so pleasant and accosting. And it is, how would I describe myself in one line without going into a diatribe about clouds, which I would like to say on the record I have never done.
Well, that's something for you to look into. Oh. You're welcome for the inspiration.
Oh, bless. I call myself the unconference speaker or the party. I like to call myself the party. I'm the party.
Okay.
Yeah, and I feel like you know that that's true. I am the party.
And where do you take this party?
Wherever I feel it. Wherever I feel it. I like to dance in situations that don't require movement. I find that, making eye contact while dancing is also really helpful and not breaking that at all, even if it is at a networking event. It's something I really love is to unhinge people just by like moving at them. Like right now I'm doing like a desk shimmy at you and just looking at you in your eyes and you feel it, but you don't know what to do with your hands.
It's a bit uncomfortable.
And I like that. I like the discomfort.
So you like to dance, making uncomfortable eye contact. You have a lot of slashes in your title. And I don't know if that is because you come from LA and everybody is like, I'm an actress and also a waitress and also a yoga instructor and also a breathwork trainee. And I also like amethyst crystals.
Okay, so you have this really beautiful, uncanny ability to take every terrible stereotype. Okay. So what for the listeners, for your loyal following, I am not a waitress, okay?
No, I know.
And
not that there's anything wrong with being a waitress.
I love waitressing for the people that do it.
Yeah.
I'm not that. Mm-hmm. What?
But you're a poet.
Yeah.
You help brands try and not stuff up with diversity, equity, inclusion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What else?
I am a DJ. I am a stepmom of 6 children, which is hilarious. I am a public speaker and a massive patient advocate for people with visible and invisible disabilities. But I like to call myself a storyteller. If I had to describe myself in all seriousness, in one line, I am a purveyor of the art of the story. I love to tell stories in any way I can. And
one of your stories was just nominated for, or Grammy considered, for Best Music for Social Justice. What was that about?
That was probably one of the biggest honors of my career. I rewrote a song with Kevin McKidd, who is one of the stars of Grey's Anatomy. The song that became really popular on that show was called Chasing Cars. So during the massive unrest of one of many in the United States around Black Lives Matter. In 2020, I rewrote a kind of a remix, a rendition of a genre of music I created called Subsoul, which stands for subconscious soul, which is my interpretation of trying to write the lyrics or trying to write the meaning or what I feel is the narrative under the lyric of the song. So Kevin and I re-recorded that and released that and went and submitted it for the social justice category for the Grammys, which is a new category, which I was really excited to get in.
And you mentioned Grey's Anatomy there because you're also in Grey's Anatomy, speaking of all the slashes in your title.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was awesome. I was the first character to portray the disease that I had, which is MS, and also the first gay queer character as well. And that was a lot of fun.
The first queer character in all those seasons?
No. The first gay and disabled,
right?
Portraying the disease that I actually had, which I was in season 17, and it's really something to think about representation when it comes to the arts or media. To think that a medical show, any medical show, or any space really entertainment where they feel they cannot cast the person or persons with the affinity or the disability, to think that they are constantly still reaching out for prosthetics or some sort of adaptation. It cannot be that there aren't people in the world that could actually just be cast actually. And I mean, this conversation could go 100 ways. And I was just really honored to be able to not only showcase the fact that you can work in entertainment in Hollywood with a disability, with that actively being present. And it came up a few times on set, like they had to call, cut just because like I was seizing up a bit. And, it was a really interesting experience to be able to showcase that just because we have the disease and just because you have something that requires attention does not mean that it has you. And it also doesn't mean that you cannot do great things. Yeah. We don't have enough representation in this space. And it's something that I consider to be one of my life's passions and work, is to continue just stepping out and showing people what that's like and letting them understand that you don't have to stop. You don't have to stop living. You don't have to stop enjoying yourself. You just have to make amendments, and we need to do better with that.
Obviously, the setting is a medical show. As you say, you had an episode.
Yeah.
So in that environment, I'm assuming they were pretty well equipped to respond to whatever it was your symptoms were at the time.
Yeah.
What's your understanding, speaking to other disability advocates, of, we want that representation. You're seeing it more on streaming, but do they make the space for it? Is it inclusive? Are those sets inclusive and responsive to what working with people with disability might look like?
The thing about it is that those of us in the community, those of us that are carrying either a visible or an invisible disability, my disease is incurable. So the concept that I want to talk about that every day is I do not want to discuss it. They made plenty of concession. My right hand was there, and Cindy's worked with me for years. And so it was actually really very funny to be surrounded by all of this beautiful medical equipment. I'm in a MRI or a CAT scan machine, and my arm starts popping up like on the table, and I call MS it's like an unruly house guest more than anything. Watching everyone else deal with it is far more annoying than actually having the incurable disease itself, because people are always like, do you need turmeric? So yeah. And I'm like, nope, there's nothing in turmeric. Yeah. No, but thank you so much for the recommendation, and so they all look at Cindy and they call cut, and they're all standing around me. I'm sitting up on the table, and it's all these, faux doctors. And they were like, are you okay? And do we need to cut? And I was like, I forget that none of you guys are actually doctors. Like, and they all fall out laughing in that weird, like, corporate stress laugh. Yeah. They're like, oh, she's so...
But you know what? Grey's Anatomy has a lot to answer for, because they're all obviously faux doctors, but also hot doctors.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was in hospital a couple of months ago for a pretty routine procedure, but which went a little wrong. And so I wake up at one point and I lift up in the middle of the night, and I lift up my blanket and there's blood everywhere. Sure. And I'm like, okay, this is not what it's meant to be. So I call the nurse, she presses the emergency button, and then all these doctors run in. And I was like, oh my God, this is like Grey's Anatomy. Mm-hmm. Except none of them were hot.
They are not hot.
And I was like,
it's upsetting. What?
I was more upset about that than the blood.
100%. Because you go in there and you're just like, well, this isn't a cool experience at all. Like, this is very boring. I even opened a couple of doors that I wasn't supposed to see if like somebody was getting hyped. They weren't. Everybody, I just like, and it smells weird in here, and it didn't smell on set. It was great.
Yeah,
I was walking around the hospital, and I was like, this is really nice. At one point, it felt so real. I thought I was not okay. Like, I was like, am I all right? Me and Cindy cracked up. I was like, am I good? No, I'm okay. They were like, cut.
What do you mean by am I good?
I felt like I was going into surgery. Like, for real. Like, I was in the whole garb. And I was like, man, I hope I'm okay. I'm fine.
Like, are you going to be here when I wake up?
Yeah, and I was
is
like,
the surgery going to go okay?
Is everything all right? Like, are we good? But then somebody brought me a hot chocolate, so it was fantastic. Yeah.
So you're obviously a poet, and I want to know what it was like when you told either your careers advisor or your mom, and you were like, I've really considered my options, and poet is where I landed.
Yeah, well, my mom hung up on me. She's retired. She's a white-collar crime and environmental tort litigator.
Yeah.
So she's very flexible, super open to changes. She's like, yeah, just go where your heart is. She never said that. No. So she hung up, but the way she would tell the story was that we got disconnected. But semantically, what actually happened is she removed the receiver from her face and hung it up. So it wasn't a cell phone time. We weren't there. Like there was no tunnel. It was landline to landline. I have to deliver that differently in the younger audiences because they cannot understand what is happening.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, the phones were, never mind. Yeah. And they're just like, how old are you? And I was like, can you spell? So, but she didn't do well. When I was asked to open for Maria Shriver in 2010, all of a sudden, my mom's narrative, as mothers do, was like, I've always loved poetry. We have been a house of poems. And I'm like, you are okay. So this is where we're going to go. All right, okay. Yeah.
Well, maybe she was just applying poetic license till the phone got disconnected.
Yeah, no, she took a lot of licenses after that. She was like, I love Shakespeare. I'm like, stop this. What is happening? Yeah, she's hilarious.
So how does a poet then become a corporate crisis fixer and a diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist?
Yeah, that's poetic in itself. Well, I studied business administration with an emphasis in ethics and worked in human resources up until I decided, after a box of wine and Bugle cone-shaped corn chips, to become a poet full-time, because at 23, that is how you make decisions. It's probably not how you made decisions, Antoinette, because you have a plan for even the plan. Yeah. And I'm like, who needs it? And you're like, where are you? Yeah. So, and we do that, which is great. That's a fun little exercise for us. So, when I decided to kind of foray into figuring out what life could be like in entertainment, what I realized very quickly was that it is, it's so volatile. Waiting for the call, waiting for the yes. You're constantly asking people to accept the version of you in auditions or whatever that is. And I was like, I'm also not made for this. Yeah. So there's got to be a way to create some sort of baseline for myself. So I started moving around in the corporate spaces after getting on the lecture circuit and talking at a lot of conferences and things like that. And it's been a really cool journey just because it's not something that's been done before. So I get to architect a lot of the blueprint and how it goes.
The blueprint for big brands like Johnson & Johnson.
Exactly right. Yeah. And it really is about me being able to combine my love of business and how that marketing moves and the art of storytelling and the art of social and emotional learning. Like, people are not monoliths. They are not also just the last 4 digits of their pay ID. Like, people have aspirations and they are carrying the dreams of their children and generations before them, and they use the work as their vehicle to get there. So when you delete that and you delete their ability to be people, you've lost it. And there isn't enough hierarchy in the world to make me think otherwise. It is very important, no matter what that position is, that they feel seen. And there are ways in which you can do that. So I like to go in to these corporate spaces as a help and as a space where we can tie up some of those synapses, because I can be exterior, because I can actually, now not working in HR directly for an organization, I can be what I wanted to be, which was a resource for human beings. So I like to be able to come in almost like a Robin Hood for both sides.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Speaking of both sides, I want to know, both sides of the equator, what things are like, because you have clients in the US, but you've also developing lots of work here in Australia. Are the conversations similar? Is the temperature similar? Are we any further here in Australia in our DE&I journey, especially around those kind of intersectional identities? Because for so long, it's been like women, which is important. But, as we know, women is one dimension.
100%.
And for a long time, feminism has supported a certain type of woman.
Yeah. The conversations are not different. Australia is... In some ways, the landscapes are entirely identical, and in other ways, they're so vastly different that you can't actually compare them. What worries me at times is what feels like the obsession to mirror American culture.
In what ways do you see that?
Well, being here for the decision on the referendum was deafening. Just because I could feel all of the different energies and I had sat in so many different conversations, listening to for and against, but watching real time, the hurt of people devastated by those results. Also with enough of that, let's move on. That is so much of what I have witnessed all my life in the U.S. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when you break it down just to the very basics, when you see the uprise and the furious response around acknowledgement of country. Yes. You think to yourself, what are you on about? Like, this is okay. There are so many ways and so many spaces we can talk about change and things that need to get done. This is not something to be upset about. Especially if you, I pride myself on being able to pull the situation down to its lowest basic need. If it is your home, someone walks in, barges in the front door, kicks you out and tells you to stay in the shed, and then is like, this is where I am, and don't bring up another thing, and you're welcome, and you ought to be grateful. In no universe. There's not one, but I could go on and on and on about a supremacist culture. I can talk about the archetype of how that works. I can talk about how even inside of our own minority communities, there is derision there to turn inward on one another versus to come together to go outward for progress. There's so many spaces that you can occupy here. The thing that I find to be evergreen for me, whether it's being in America or being here, is just feeling... I feel really forlorn and super torn about the fact that I think I am watching something in repeat. I am watching what I know is it's not just down the track, like it's right there. And that breaks my heart. It really does. I think that to know that I could live in another country across the world and not fear my life, and not fear for my own safety. So you feel safer as a black woman here in Australia? I'm a novelty here.
And by black, African-American black.
African-American black.
Yes. Separate and distinct from Indigenous black.
And listening to the stories here from Indigenous Australians, black Australians, I am disgusted by that. I am not remotely surprised. Because of all of the scalable models in the world, and I could go on and on about marketing and I really geek out about that stuff. Supremacy and oppression is the most brilliant model of anything I've ever seen. It has never required technology. It does not require anything other than it is completely self-contained. People talk a lot about dismantling the system. It will never happen. It will never eventuate. And I don't feel macabre or cynical saying that. Not only will the unoppressed not allow it, the oppressed keep it going as well. Both parties have to answer and be held accountable for that. And so a lot of people focus in on like, the system's broken. The system is not broken. It's designed impeccably to scale. It has never skipped a beat. There has not been a tech breakdown, nothing.
It is versatile. It can pivot. It's the turn of the century.
Olympic. Yeah. It is literally implacable. But it is not one side that does that. And so I really do believe in my body, in my work, in who I am. I want to be in the room for the conversations to help de-escalate, not only for them, but for myself. If I don't stay in this work, I will become so hardened.
Yeah.
If I am not literally on the side of trying to hear people out and trying to fuse a space where we could hopefully have a conversation and not insult each other, I'll lose my hope too. Yeah.
Let's talk about something that brings you a lot of joy, because we know that, as you say, supremacy and in those structures are built, and by design they're here to stay, and it can be really easy to be overwhelmed and give up and become despondent.
Yeah.
But you just got married. So let's take a moment to talk about that. While you're in the US, you were like, I'm going to shoot over there with my sexy fiance and by the way, we're going to get married.
Yeah. I said to Emma, my fiance, I said to her, it has been a dream of mine since I can remember. I grew up singing. I love music. I've always been a musician first. And I said, but I'm not upset, A, that I didn't win the Grammy for social justice, but also I don't want my first one to be for this. I don't want it to be for the fact that I'm constantly having to exclaim that my life does matter. I don't want that. I want to be able to be revered for the meritocracy of my talents.
Yeah, just for the artistry, not the trauma in the artistry.
Absolutely. And I said, so let's get married.
Yeah.
In Vegas. And we went to Vegas last year. And we had the best time. And we won, I think, like $70. And it was hysterical. And then she found out we got free drinks while sitting at the slot machines. And she loves a coupon. She is. And so that was fantastic. And then I got some free cashews that had some delicious dust on them. And it was like a sweet, salty vibe. And I got a whole bag of them. I just wouldn't shut up about it. So they gave me an entire set. And we were both very passionately just pumped. So that was why we decided to go to Vegas.
Okay, cashews and coupons.
That's right.
Okay, very romantic. And Emma is Emma Isaacs, the business chick founder, and she runs probably Australia's largest women's business networking. Overachieve as much, the two of you?
Oh, listen, look, she's a lot. Mm-hmm. She is the best. She's my dream girl. She is the coolest human being I've ever met. She's my best friend. We have the best time together. She has truly exceeded any possibility of me like ever not having just this permanent smile about her. She is 100% walking sunlight. And she has changed my life in so many ways and shown up for me far before we were together in a way that I didn't even think was possible. And
tell me about her showing up when the Ku Klux Klan showed up.
Yeah, so I was living in an active sect of the Klan, really close to where I grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles. And, 2020 was a time. A lot of people baked bread, which was cool, and did a lot of Instagram live chats that nobody was watching, which was also strange during the pandemic. And as the votes and as the election started to really come to a head, I realized that I was living in a place that was very unsafe. So I was called the N-word to my face when I asked someone to move their car that was blocking my driveway. I lost my ability to get my mail because my service dog had been listed as a dangerous pit bull. She's a Great Dane pit bull.
By members of the Klan? Or no?
Oh, well, potentially. He ran all of that county of the post office, so they filed a bunch of false reports, and I had to leave my house every day during the pandemic, immunocompromised, to get my mail. When they sent out the animal shelter folks, I have a picture of Bella on the floor laying down with the deputy just hanging out. And the deputy's like, we have no idea what. They came to take her and like euthanize her. And like she is the sweetest, kindest thing. She's humongous. But that's when I fall or if I seize, she's trained to help me regain consciousness, you know. So there was that. There were nails in my driveway and my truck tires. And then they took my entire fence down. And the last straw was my neighbors calling in a threat that I had started a house fire. So helicopter, battering ram, full combat. It wasn't 7 a.m. They all came busting through my front door. I was there gardening like I do every day with my bonfire, my little fire pit, you know, from like our Home Depot, which is like Bunnings here. And I left that day. I drove with one of my best friends. We got in my truck and I drove to Atlanta and left my house almost fully packed. I was terrified. Everything was happening with the legislation around Breonna Taylor and trying to get those cops brought in on charges. And just to think to myself, I remember when Nate and I were leaving, Nathaniel's my best friend, was my housemate at the time. All of my neighbors were just looking out of their windows. And it was like a Jordan Peele, Get Out type vibe. And I thought to myself, I went to university there in that city. I grew up there. And I can remember Nate and I went to get our hair cut a couple weeks before this. And this guy was standing in the bed of his truck with a double barrel shotgun next to an ammunition store. And we drove by and he just followed he just followed our car and they were all just sitting there hanging out. And so there was so much happening just week after week after week. And when that started to come to a head and when my fence got taken down and the nails in the driveway and then the cops, I left that day. And M came down, my very good friend who was with us in Vegas, Celia, flew in from Denver. And M and Celia packed up my whole place and put it on a truck. And I never went back there. It's still so awful. And I didn't say anything about it on social for a long time, but the amount of messages around, oh, I can't believe this is happening. Well, look, I mean, if it's happening to me, who has a very public platform, wide range, and can safely, you know, impact quite a few folks, you can only imagine what's happening to the people who quite literally have zero resources. I get nervous at times when I see the unrest here, and I just pray that I have the strength to just keep doing the work. I really want to keep showing up for people no matter what they look like.
Part of continuing to show up, and this is something you and I talk a lot about, and it's also having fun and also finding time to laugh. Otherwise, it all gets really heavy and it all gets really overwhelming. So let's talk about your next endeavour, because that is with me.
Yeah.
I'm the other Antoinette.
That's right.
So using all the poetic words you can muster, what is the Antoinettes podcast and why is the Antoinettes podcast needed?
In my estimation, which my co-host Antoinette is, I find to be one of the most brilliant voices of our time, just in the way that you stick to the task of making sure that you tell the story. I see it as a really beautiful confluence of us getting to represent both of our lived truths and experience and work and personal, but also like the ability to just 100% connect with each other and laugh, because you cannot live a life without that. It is so important to be like, this is happening and this is also happening. So I think that our podcast really is opening itself up to let the headlines and life guide it. And I know, you know, from having producers and being entertainment, you know, you do have to stick to a plan. But I remember telling you, I was like, oh, you can plan whatever you want. Like the world will continue to be itself. It's the only thing I can actually count on is that people will continue to show their ass. And then I'll just be like, that was terrible.
Hence our tagline, welcome to the shit show.
Welcome to it.
Which encompasses everything from
it really does.
Hollywood to politics to
it's
parenting.
A global, it's a whole vibe. You know, it is. It is a vibe. But I love it because I find it's very difficult to find people that can traverse both the macabre and heart-wrenching, and then it go also to the joy, which is not saying either one of these things aren't happening. It just is that this is where we are. This is where we are. And I don't find a lot of people that will laugh with me. I mean, I can make people laugh.
And laugh at you.
And you will always be there to laugh at me. But it is, I'm here for it. I love this. I love this.
Azure Antoinette, she is bloody awesome, and she's also my new co-host, the co-host of the Antoinettes. That dropped just this week, and it's where two smart asses tackle one problem every week. Nothing is off the table. We won't always break bread. If you're keen on this shit show, subscribe to the Antoinettes podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And now another legend is going to jump into the studio, and it is my producer extraordinaire, Helen Smith. Because it is time for the weekend list. Helen, shoot.
So my first recommendation is trying a dance class at your gym, if you go to a gym. Now, I didn't mean to try this class. I missed my weights class and there was only freestyle dance available.
And literally called freestyle dance.
Literally freestyle dance. And I was like, oh, God, I'm just going to have to do it. It was so much fun. Like, I felt so silly. I felt so, out of my
comfort zone.
Out of my comfort zone. But it kind of just reminded me, don't take yourself too seriously. The world is so crazy right now.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on and it's so easy to feel overwhelmed. It was so nice to just
let your body move.
Let my body move.
Strange ways.
Yeah.
And were there mirrors so you could see how ridiculous? Because I would not want to see.
That was the part that I was just like, oh my God. And the instructor, she's like, woo, woo.
Yeah,
woo.
really.
And I was like, whoa. I was like, I'm not ready.
Kind of liberating, I'd imagine.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, so my gym doesn't have dance classes, but there are lots of anything from a community hall to the more serious. I did the stupid thing of once doing my first dance class at Sydney Theatre Company or something, and I walked in and everyone was proper pumping and grinding and moving, and I couldn't go left to right. So I wouldn't do that. I'd probably do it with 80-year-olds at my local.
I was doing.
Yeah.
I was doing it with all the mums and I was like, this is amazing. And the other one, if you don't go to a local gym, there's called MadFit on YouTube. And she does, you can do it in your living room. If you're just okay, I don't want to do this in front of people.
Yeah.
Do it in your living room. And it's
dance.
so fun. And she has workout dance classes. So yeah, that is my recommendation. Move your body, have a bit of fun. Don't take yourself too seriously.
That sounds like very good advice. My first recommendation is this comedian who is quite big, but I've only really come to know her work. It's Taylor Tomlinson. She's an American stand-up comedian, writer and TV host. So she has 3 Netflix specials, and her most recent one is Have It All. She could possibly be the hardest working woman in comedy in the US. She talks a lot about her mum dying of cancer at 8, but she makes really crass dead mum jokes. So once you move past the awkwardness, she also used to tell her friends that her parents were separated. And then when they found out, they were like, separated? Like, your mum's dead? And she's like, well, technically they are separated by Jesus. She had an uber Christian upbringing. She loves Taylor Swift. She has this really all-American kind of look, but she pushes boundaries in a way you wouldn't expect someone who looks like her to. She's super funny and polished. Her sets are super tight. Her delivery is amazing. And I'm just super impressed by her. I don't even think she's 30 yet, and she has 3 Netflix specials and she goes everywhere. And I think I just find her so impressive and such a wonderful performer. So that's Taylor Tomlinson. She has 3 specials on Netflix, the latest of which is Having It All.
I love that. I love a female comedian.
Check it out. She's so good.
That sounds great. My second one is a TV show. It's called Dance Life. It's on Amazon.
Very dancey this week.
I know.
I like that. Yeah.
It's my dance era.
Yeah.
So it's called Dance Life on Amazon Prime, and it's about these first-year full-time dance students at Brent Street, which is known for its amazing dancers and amazing performers. And it's so good. It's kind of like the Australian version of Dance Mums, but without the dance mums and without all the, crazy full-on yelling. Yeah. But these performers and dancers, they're 18 years old, some of them, quite young.
Incredible.
They're insane. They're amazing. And it shows you how much pressure and how hard it is in the dance world.
So it's impressive, but it's also telling of the behind the scenes stuff.
Oh yeah, it really shows you like if you want to make it, you got to
your life.
It's your whole life, and you've got to work hard. You've got to outdance every single person in the room. You cannot have a bad day almost, which they really do show, and they show some of the young dancers like emotionally it's quite hard, and the toughest of the tough, the most dedicated, they get through. But yeah, it leads up to their end of year performance, and it's such a great watch. Love it.
We'll check that one out. My final recommendation, because I don't eat gluten, not because I'm a celiac, but because I'm intolerant, and I'm not going to go into how and why, what happens, because it's, awkward bowel conversations. And I really miss burgers because I love burgers. And so I have started having and trying different types of lettuce burgers. And at first I used to scoff at people who would have lettuce burgers. And I'm like, that's just a diet burger. That's not a real burger.
But it's so good.
Depending on, you have to get iceberg lettuce because it has to be big enough.
You got to wrap it. Come on, we're not going to be like.
It's got to be a decent amount of lettuce. And anyway, I have been experimenting with all sorts of things inside, and it begs the question, because sometimes it starts to look like a bit of a stir fry. Begs the question: is the lettuce burger just a Bogan San Choy Bao? Potentially. I know it's Lunar New Year. My answer to that is yes, it is my version of a Bogan San Choy Bao, because I start to chop up and put all sorts of things like chicken and stuff, and sometimes even rice that don't belong in a burger, and I call it my lettuce burger. Well, it started off as a burger, and then sometimes it takes another direction because I'm trying to get creative, I've realised that what I have instead inadvertently produced is a Bogan San Choy Bao.
My God.
Especially when I put chili sauce on it, I'm like, now it really is a Bogan San Choy Bao.
Yeah, see, I love this. I've actually been having this for the last couple of weeks. Like, it's my new fixation meal.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, but I'm not putting rice in it. I'm putting like a burger or veggie patty with some cheese and some coleslaw and sauces and stuff. Like, mine's more traditional burger style without the rice and
without the Bogan Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year appropriation. Fair enough. But that is it for this week. Thank you so much for being with us and tuning in. It's always a pleasure. If you want more of the Weekend Briefing, you can find us on the Listener app. You can download the Listener app in the App Store and you can follow us there. Otherwise, you can follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. And why not give us a rating and a review for the fabulous interview with Azure Antoinette? And FYI, you can review and rate every episode. Catch you next week.
Listener.